Elias Brandt moved quietly through the skeletal remains of Arden 9's old mining colony. The orbital lights flickered weakly against the black void, casting long shadows across corroded metal and shattered glass. Once, this place had hummed with life and machinery, but now it was little more than a graveyard of human ambition. Elias had been scavenging for weeks, searching derelict freighters and broken habitats for anything that could be repurposed. Food, fuel, or even a working circuit board, anything to keep the colony alive. The hiss of the life support system in his suit was the only sound that accompanied him until a sudden, soft thump echoed across the empty hangar. Elias froze. It was not a sound of metal collapsing or loose debris. It was deliberate. Something alive. He approached cautiously, flashlight in hand, scanning the shadowed corners. A low groan vibrated through the floor beneath him. Then he saw it, a creature curled against a broken bulkhead. Its scales shimmered dimly, reflecting the scattered light like a pool of dark liquid glass. It was small enough to fit in the hangar, yet massive, with wings folded awkwardly and a tail that twitched nervously. Its eyes, glowing faintly, were filled with hunger and fear. Elias's heart pounded, but not from fear. He had read the old records, heard the stories whispered across colonies of dragons surviving in the void, sentient creatures older than human empires. Few had ever seen one up close, and fewer had lived to tell the tale. This one looked fragile, almost broken, yet there was a fierce intelligence lurking behind its eyes. "Easy. I won't hurt you," Elias whispered, lowering his flashlight. His voice trembled with a mixture of awe and caution. He reached into his pack and pulled out the last ration of synth protein. Holding it out, he waited. The dragon hesitated, wings shivering, nostrils flaring. It sniffed the air, hesitant. Hunger wrestled with instinct. Finally, with a careful, almost reluctant motion, it edged closer and took the ration with its clawed mouth. A low rumble echoed through its throat, vibrating the floor beneath Elias's boots. It was not anger. It was gratitude or recognition. Elias knelt a little closer, scanning the creature for injuries. Its wings were torn at the edges, one leg bent unnaturally. He could see dried blood crusted along scales, and the thinness of its frame spoke of days without sustenance. "I'll patch you up," he said softly. He worked quickly, using the medkit he carried for colony workers. Bandages, pain suppressors, and stimulants, small measures to stabilize a being so much larger and older than any human. The dragon flinched at every touch, yet it did not resist. Its trust was cautious but present. Hours passed as Elias moved between tending wounds and scanning old logs for any record of dragon activity. The more he learned, the more he realized the stakes. If word of this dragon reached the Imperials, or any of the human factions hunting or studying these creatures, it could ignite a war. 15 warships could descend on Arden 9 before anyone could react. Humanity's fragile hold on this sector could be obliterated. Still, he could not turn away. A creature capable of ancient thought and emotion deserved life, just as much as any human. He set up a makeshift shelter in one of the larger hangars, using old cargo containers to create walls. The dragon curled inside, shivering as it tried to conserve heat, its body small but tense with awareness. Elias stayed close, monitoring air quality, pressure levels, and the creature's heart rate. He called it Lyrithus, a name he remembered from the old legends, though he wondered if it recognized names at all. The bond, fragile and new, was already forming. Every breath they shared in that dim hangar was a tacit agreement. Survival at any cost. Elias knew that providing shelter and food was only the first step. Protecting Lyrithus from the world outside was another challenge entirely, and he had no idea how many eyes were already watching. A sudden blip on his handheld scanner froze him. A craft emerged from hyperspace, appearing far too close to be routine. Its size dwarfed anything Elias had encountered in the sector. The scanner identified it as a military signature, a capital-class warship, and it was heading straight for Arden 9. Elias swallowed hard, his mind racing. 15 warships, according to the legend, could arrive any moment if the Imperials detected Lyrithus. 15 ships, armed with weapons that could pulverize the hangar, or the entire colony. And they would not hesitate. He looked at the dragon, small and vulnerable in the shadows. Its eyes met his, and in that instant, he knew a choice had been made. He would not abandon it. Humanity had survived impossible odds before, and tonight, one human would stand against what might be an entire fleet. Elias activated the emergency protocols in the hangar, sealing bulkheads and preparing energy shields as best he could. The dragon stirred, sensing the tension, its wings fluttering weakly in the confined space. Outside, the void was silent, but the distant hum of engines grew louder. The first warship was near. Elias clenched his fists. Fear raced through him, but determination burned brighter. The night had begun with a simple act of kindness. Now, it might end with humanity fighting for a chance to survive, and a dragon depending on a single human for salvation. The hangar doors vibrated as the warship's shadow stretched across the floor. Lyrithus growled softly and Elias whispered, "We'll face them together." The void outside waited. And so did the impossible odds. Elias Brandt moved carefully through the ruins of Arden 9's old mining colony. Broken machinery lay scattered across the cracked metal floor, and the dim light of the dying orbital lamps flickered across shattered glass and corroded panels. Once, this place had been alive with the hum of industry, but now it was silent, a graveyard of human ambition. Elias had spent days scavenging, searching derelict freighters and abandoned habitat pods for anything useful. Every piece of food, fuel, or circuitry could make the difference between survival and death in this forsaken outpost. A sudden metallic thump echoed from the shadowed end of a hangar, startling him. He froze, listening. This sound was not the ordinary groan of corroded metal. It was deliberate, rhythmic, alive. He flicked on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. There, huddled against a broken bulkhead, was a creature he could hardly believe. Its scales shimmered faintly like fractured starlight. It was enormous yet fragile, wings folded awkwardly against its body, tail curling nervously, and eyes dim but intelligent. Elias's pulse raced. He had read ancient records of dragons and human legends, creatures older than the first starships, said to survive the void in hiding. Few humans had ever encountered one, and even fewer had lived. Now one lay injured before him, trembling and wary. He took a slow step forward, lowering his voice. "I won't hurt you. I just want to help." He reached into his pack and pulled out the last ration of synth protein. Holding it out, he waited. The dragon hesitated, nostrils flaring as it weighed the risk. Hunger fought instinct. Slowly, it approached and accepted the food with a careful, deliberate motion. A deep rumble vibrated from its throat, shaking the floor slightly. Elias's knees nearly buckled at the sound, but it was not aggression. It was recognition, maybe gratitude. He knelt beside the creature, scanning for injuries. One leg was bent at an odd angle, wings frayed at the edges, and its scales bore the marks of old wounds and dried blood. Thinness made it seem almost skeletal. "I'll help you," he whispered, pulling out his medkit. Bandages, pain suppressors, stimulants, he worked quickly, applying what he could to stabilize the dragon. The creature flinched with each touch but did not resist. Trust was fragile but present. He named it Lyrithus, recalling the name from old records. Whether the creature understood was impossible to know, but it seemed to respond to the sound of his voice. Hours passed. Elias moved between treating Lyrithus and scanning old colony logs, trying to piece together what might have happened to this sector. He realized the gravity of the situation. If word of Lyrithus's presence reached the Imperials, or any faction that studied or hunted dragons, they would send warships. Entire fleets could descend on Arden 9 in hours. 15 warships or more. Humanity's claim on this sector could vanish overnight. Despite the danger, he could not abandon Lyrithus. A being so intelligent, so ancient, did not deserve to die in silence. He built a shelter using old cargo containers, forming walls to protect them from the bitter vacuum winds that still seeped through tiny cracks in the hangar. Lyrithus curled inside, shivering, wings pressed close, tail twitching in nervous rhythm. Elias stayed near, monitoring its vitals and keeping the environment stable. A bond formed in silence. Every breath, every careful movement built trust. Elias felt a fierce responsibility, realizing that this creature's survival and, perhaps, the fate of the colony rested in his hands. He was not just saving a dragon. He was defying a universe that often rewarded greed and cruelty, proving that a human could choose morality, courage, and determination even against impossible odds. Then a blip on his scanner froze him. Something large had appeared at the edge of the system, moving too quickly to be routine traffic. The display identified a capital-class warship, far too close to be coincidence. Its arrival spelled danger. The legends were true. Dragons were not merely wildlife, they were considered strategic assets, and contact with one could trigger massive military responses. Elias's stomach tightened as he realized that if this ship reported Lyrithus, 15 warships, or more, could be on their way. He looked at the dragon. Its eyes met his, wide and cautious, yet seemingly aware of the rising tension. Lyrithus shivered against the makeshift walls of the hangar, wings twitching as it sensed the imminent threat. Elias's mind raced. They had survived the empty colony. Now survival meant defying a fleet that could obliterate them in minutes. "Stay close," he whispered, more to himself than to Lyrithis. He activated the hangar's emergency protocols, sealing bulkheads and redirecting power to shields and lighting. The dragon shifted, sensing his urgency. The distant hum of the approaching warship grew louder, vibrating through the hull. Elias's fingers tightened around his tools, his chest heavy with fear and resolve. This night had begun with a simple act of kindness, feeding a dying creature, offering care where no one else would. Now it might end in a confrontation that could decide not only the dragon's fate but humanity's standing in this remote sector. Elias felt the weight of the universe pressing on him, yet he did not falter. Courage, ingenuity, and determination would be his weapons. The shadow of the warship stretched across the hangar doors. Lyrithis rumbled softly, sensing danger. Elias whispered, "We face them together." Outside the void waited. And so did impossible odds. Elias had spent the past 2 days moving in constant shadows, scanning for Imperial sensors and rerouting power to the hangar's shields. Lyrithis remained weak, wings folded, but its glowing eyes tracked every movement. Every hum of machinery, every vibration beneath the floor reminded Elias that the fleet could arrive at any moment. The threat was no longer abstract. He had seen the first warship. He knew more were coming. He crouched in the corner, studying the colony's network of derelict industrial rigs. Arden 9 had once been a bustling mining hub, a labyrinth of conveyors, energy lines and maintenance tunnels. Now it was perfect for misdirection. An idea struck him, sudden and sharp, fueled by desperation and stubborn determination. Humans had survived impossible odds before, relying on brains rather than firepower. This would be no different. Using Lyrithis's bioelectric field as a power source, Elias began rerouting energy through the colony's old sensor arrays and damaged holographic projectors. Every heartbeat of the dragon, every flicker of its scale-generated electricity, would amplify the signals. The goal was audacious: to make the Imperials think the colony had grown into a massive, fortified installation, bristling with defenses that didn't exist. He called it a mirage field, a human trick that might buy them minutes or even hours, enough to survive. The work was exhausting. He climbed scaffolding, rewired ancient control panels, and connected Lyrithis to the system with careful precision. The dragon shivered against him at first, uncertainty clear in its eyes. "I need you, Lyrithis," he whispered. "Just trust me a little longer." Each pulse of the dragon's energy made the projectors flare, and the hangar hummed with an eerie, almost alive resonance. Hours passed. Elias barely slept. Outside, distant thrums of warship engines could be felt more than heard. Sensors flickered with strange readings, confusing the colony's decayed surveillance equipment. Then the first scout vessel appeared on his display. It hovered, silent, scanning, unaware of the phantom defenses growing across the colony. Elias held his breath as the readings showed impossibly large numbers of armed units. Phantom fleets, phantom cannons, phantom energy grids. The scout's sensors were deceived. It reported a colony capable of withstanding an entire armada. He had turned the dragon's power and the ruins of Arden 9 into a weapon of illusion, a clever trap that relied entirely on brains and courage. Yet the danger was far from over. Elias could feel it. Every second of delay was also a second for the Imperials to double-check, to question, to strike. 15 warships could still arrive at full speed, and even one wrong move would destroy them both. The colony's structures groaned under the strain of redirected power. Sparks rained from overloaded conduits. Lyrithis growled softly, sensing tension, and Elias placed a hand on its flank. "We're close," he said. "Almost ready." Suddenly the scout began transmitting. Its message was fragmented, panicked. Impossible, readings, defenses, energy signatures, It cut out mid-transmission, engines flaring before it retreated. Elias exhaled slowly, heart racing. He had bought time, but now the real fleet would come, more alert, more determined. His work had to scale. He moved through the colony's maintenance tunnels, creating pathways that would mislead incoming ship sensors. Each misalignment, each phantom shield was a calculated risk. One mistake could expose Lyrithis or himself. Sweat ran down his face under the suit. Hunger, fatigue, and fear gnawed at him, but he did not pause. He could not. Humanity depended on it. Even Lyrithis seemed to understand, hovering closer, wings quivering but ready. Elias whispered, "We're not just surviving. We're fighting with our minds. That's what makes us human." The dragon's low rumble was almost a reply, a sign of shared determination. In that moment, Elias felt a surge of courage. Humans had no fleets here, no weapons that could match Imperial firepower. But ingenuity, courage, and audacity had carried them through worse. The first of the fleet's main vessels appeared on the edge of the system. Its size dwarfed the hangar itself. Sensors went haywire as the mirage field warped the readings. Energy flares and false signatures lit the void. The warship's crew hesitated, unsure whether to strike immediately or investigate further. Elias watched the feed, heart pounding. Every second of hesitation was life gained. But the real challenge was just beginning. 15 warships could converge at any moment, and each carried firepower capable of leveling Arden 9. Elias knew the coming hours would demand more than clever tricks. They would demand split-second decisions, sacrifices, and courage that could not be measured. One wrong move would destroy everything. He crouched next to Lyrithis in the hangar, adjusting the final projector and linking more energy lines. Sparks leapt across exposed panels, and the dragon shivered under the humming surge. "Hold on, old friend," Elias murmured. "This is just the beginning. They think they can intimidate us. They don't know humans." Outside, the void remained silent for a heartbeat, then thrummed with the subtle vibrations of the approaching fleet. The first warship loomed nearer, scanning, probing. Elias felt the pressure, but his mind worked faster than fear. Every calculation, every improvised adjustment, every pulse of energy could tip the balance. A sudden flare from the projector lit the hangar in jagged shadows, and Lyrithis hissed. Elias's scanner showed a spike in the fleet sensor readings. Someone had noticed something. Panic flickered across the human fleet interface for a moment. Elias swallowed hard, knowing this was the edge of the cliff. One wrong calculation, and the fleet would descend without hesitation. He touched the dragon's scaled flank, whispering, "It's time." The mirage field flared brighter, projecting phantom defenses across every angle. And in the distance, the main fleet slowed, scanning, hesitating, uncertain. Elias had won the first gambit, but the game was far from over. He straightened, eyes burning with determination. The survival of Lyrithis, and perhaps the reputation of humanity itself, depended on what he did next. And Elias Brandt had never known how far courage, intelligence, and sheer human will could carry him until this moment. The fleet waited, and the impossible odds pressed closer. Elias crouched behind a stack of fractured cargo containers, the hum of Arden 9's power grids vibrating through the floor beneath him. The mirage field had held the Imperial scout at bay, but now the real fleet was arriving. 15 warships, massive and precise, appeared on the edge of the system, their engines thrumming with a terrifying rhythm. Sensors painted the hangar with false readings of overwhelming defenses, but Elias knew it was only a matter of time before the Imperials tested the illusion. He glanced at Lyrithis, curled in the center of the hangar. The dragon's wings twitched nervously, and its eyes glimmered with intelligence and trust. Elias placed a hand on its scaled flank. "Stay calm. We have one chance to turn this around." The dragon growled softly in response, a low vibration that shook the air. Elias had learned that courage was contagious, even for creatures older than the stars. The first salvo of probes from the fleet streaked across the void, testing defenses with energy pulses. Sparks rained down from overloaded conduits, and alarms flashed across his makeshift control panels. Elias adjusted the mirage field, feeding more energy through Lyrithis' bioelectric signature, amplifying the phantom cannons and fleets projected across the colony. Every heartbeat of the dragon became a pulse of deception, making the Imperials hesitate. Then came the first strike. A beam slammed into the hangar's outer wall, tearing through corroded metal and throwing debris into the air. Elias rolled behind a support pillar, ears ringing. Lyrithis hissed and flared its wings weakly, but Elias held firm. "We're not done yet," he shouted, fumbling for the manual overrides. The colony's old industrial rigs, rusted but still functional, became tools of survival. Conveyor belts shifted to redirect energy surges, maintenance tunnels channeled light and sound, and every broken panel was a potential weapon of misdirection. Elias had a plan, risky but necessary. He lured the flagship, the largest of the warships, toward a narrow orbital corridor lined with collapsed mining shafts. The energy surge from Lyrithis would create a feedback pulse, enough to disrupt navigation and communications for the fleet. It required precision. One misstep in the hangar, and the dragon would be obliterated. The flagship moved closer, its massive engines flaring, scanning for the source of the phantom defenses. Elias activated the conduit network, sending pulses of Lyrithis' energy along the shafts. Sparks leapt into the void, holographic projections flared brighter, and the illusion of hundreds of armed drones and cannons exploded across the sensors. The flagship's crew faltered, unsure if they faced an ambush or a trap. Elias's heart pounded, sweat streaking his face beneath the helmet. The dragon shivered as energy flowed through its body, but he whispered, "Almost there. Just a little longer." Lyrithis responded instinctively, flexing wings and channeling power, the resonance amplifying the illusion. In that moment, human ingenuity and ancient life fused into a single weapon of survival. The flagship fired a probe beam, slicing across the hangar. Elias calculated the timing, diverting energy to shields and rerouting feedback through the industrial rigs. The beam overloaded and fragmented, scattering harmlessly into space. The fleet hesitated, analyzing the unexpected results. Elias gritted his teeth, knowing that hesitation was their only advantage. He needed more. He triggered the final phase, the orbital collapse. Charges he had planted in old mining shafts detonated in precise sequence, creating cascading debris fields in the narrow corridor. The flagship's sensors screamed with false readings of massive destruction zones and active defenses. Panic spread through the fleet's communications channels as the illusion magnified. 15 warships slowed, repositioning, unsure how to proceed. Elias took a deep breath, feeling every ounce of exhaustion, fear, and adrenaline. He had faced impossible odds and had not yielded. The dragon hissed, almost in excitement, sensing the tide turning. For a moment, the colony seemed alive again, a testament to human courage and ingenuity. A single engineer with nothing but brains, determination, and an ancient ally had brought hesitation to an entire armada. But the danger was not over. Sensors picked up smaller strike ships attempting to bypass the mirage field. Elias's fingers flew over control panels, directing energy, shifting projectors, and creating new illusions on the fly. Every heartbeat of the dragon became another pulse of power, another layer of deception. He was both strategist and soldier, his mind racing faster than fear could take hold. Then a voice came through the handheld communicator, a fragmented, urgent transmission from one of the Imperials. "Impossible, human, defenses, do not exist. Why?" The transmission cut abruptly. Elias's lips curved into a tight, grim smile. The first cracks were forming in the Imperial confidence. Humanity's courage, ingenuity, and moral choice to protect Lyrithis were reshaping the battlefield without a single conventional weapon fired. Elias turned to the dragon. "We've won the first battle, but the war isn't over. You trust me. I trust you. Together, we'll make them believe humans are never to be underestimated." Lyrithis rumbled, low and steady, wings spreading slightly as if acknowledging the unspoken pact. Outside, the fleet loomed in the void, massive and intimidating, yet hesitant. The impossible odds still pressed in, but Elias had proven that even one human, armed with courage, wit, and determination, could challenge a force far larger, far stronger. Arden 9 had become a battlefield of minds, a contest of ingenuity, and humanity had taken the first decisive step. The warships held at bay, scanning, uncertain. Elias knew the next phase would demand more daring, more precision, and perhaps a final gamble that could cost everything. But for now the colony was safe and the dragon alive. In that moment, Elias Brandt understood something profound. Humans were not just survivors. Humans could defy gods, fleets, and legends when courage and intelligence guided their hands. And in the darkness of Arden 9, against impossible odds, humanity had won a foothold, however tenuous, in the vast silence of space. The void waited. And so did the final challenge. The void was quiet now, but only briefly. The Imperial fleet had slowed, confused by Arden 9's phantom defenses and the unexpected power of one human and a dragon. Elias Brandt stood among the ruins of the hangar, sweat streaking dirt and ash across his face. Lyrithis, curled in the center, shivered but remained alive, breathing deeply as if aware the danger was only momentarily held at bay. Elias allowed himself a long exhale, knowing the battle was far from over, yet proud of what had been accomplished. A single human had survived, outsmarted, and outmaneuvered an armada 15 ships strong. Arden 9 was battered but intact. The dragon's weak rumble vibrated beneath the floor as he approached and gently ran a hand along its neck. "You're safe, for now," he whispered. "We did it together." He scanned the horizon through the hangar's viewport. The fleet loomed, distant yet threatening, engines pulsing in the void like predatory hearts. Elias knew they could not stay here indefinitely. Every second was a gamble. But he also knew that humanity's survival depended not only on brute force, it depended on courage, ingenuity, and unwavering resolve. The colony's old systems, barely functional, had become their shield. Elias tapped into the final reserves of Lyrithus's bioelectric energy to generate a massive feedback pulse. The wave rippled across the colony, overloading Imperial sensors and projecting an illusion of massive destruction. For a moment, the fleet faltered entirely, unsure whether Arden 9 had become a trap, a weapon, or a ghost in the void. Elias's lips pressed into a thin line. The humans who would later hear the story would never understand the precise tension of that moment. One miscalculation, one failed circuit, and Arden 9 Lyrithus and he would have been obliterated. Yet the pulse worked. The fleet hesitated. And that hesitation, however brief, was humanity's lifeline. He turned to the dragon, who lifted its head weakly, eyes glimmering with recognition. Lyrithus rumbled, a low, resonant vibration that seemed to carry gratitude, trust, and understanding all at once. Elias smiled faintly. You trusted me. I trust you. That's why we survive. It was a simple truth, yet one that carried the weight of an entire species. The Imperial warships began to withdraw slowly, scanning for residual signs of defenses that did not exist. Elias knew this reprieve was temporary. The Imperials would return with better intelligence, more ships, more resources. But Arden 9 had proven that humans, even alone and under impossible odds, could alter the balance of power. It was a lesson no fleet would soon forget. Over the next hours, Elias worked tirelessly to stabilize the hangar and set traps and decoys in the event of a renewed attack. Lyrithus, despite exhaustion, allowed him to connect circuits and reroute energy, their synergy almost instinctive. He realized, with awe, that survival was not just about physical strength or weaponry, it was about ingenuity, morality, and courage. A single act of kindness, a choice to help a dying creature, had rippled into the cosmos, challenging the might of an empire. When the immediate threat faded, Elias looked at the dragon, still curled but breathing steadily. He knew Lyrithus could not remain hidden forever. In time, the dragon would return to the void, perhaps to warn others of humanity's cleverness or to reclaim territories long abandoned. Yet it left behind a part of itself, embedded in the colony's systems, an enduring guardian that would protect future generations, a reminder that one human's courage could change the course of history. Elias leaned against a broken support beam, exhaustion finally catching up with him. He thought of all the other humans scattered across the Orion Belt, each facing impossible odds in their own way. Courage, ingenuity, morality, these were the true weapons of humanity, the traits that made them more than survivors. And now, in Arden 9's battered hangar, they had proven it once again. Across the system, colonies would whisper tales of an engineer who saved a dragon, outwitted a fleet, and reminded the galaxy that humans could face any challenge. He imagined children hearing the story generations from now, inspired to act with courage, to innovate, and to protect the innocent. That legacy, he realized, was more powerful than any fleet, more lasting than any weapon. The first rays of artificial sunlight from the colony's remaining solar arrays cut through the dust-filled hangar, illuminating Elias and Lyrithus. He extended a hand to the dragon, and it nudged him gently with its snout. Trust and mutual respect radiated from that simple gesture. Elias smiled. Humanity had survived, and in doing so, had proven that courage and intelligence could challenge even the greatest empires. As he looked at the stars, he felt a profound sense of purpose. The void was still vast, still dangerous, but humanity had left its mark. One act of kindness, one calculated risk, one human heart capable of hope and bravery, these had shifted the tide. The galaxy might never fully understand it, but Elias did. Humans were extraordinary. They could shine even when faced with gods and warships, even when all odds seemed impossible. Lyrithus stretched its wings weakly, the first movement toward freedom. Elias nodded, understanding that the dragon would leave, yet the bond remained, an enduring testament to human courage. The colony was safe for now, and humanity's reputation had grown, silently, across the Orion Belt. In the darkness of space, one engineer and one dragon had rewritten the rules. And humanity would never be underestimated again.